Hello everybody out there, and welcome back here to another video here with the future. And this time I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to name off my favorite toy lines from when I was a kid. I was born in 1982 and I grew up with a bunch of toy lines. I don't want to go too in depth on each of these toy lines, but I will name them off. And I will also give a reasoning on why I enjoyed each of these toy lines. It's been long overdue since I've given like a list of anything here on my channel, but I want to thank everybody who has subscribed lately, dropped any comments, left any feedback. I appreciate all the support here on my channel, and I hope you enjoy listening to this quick list. I'm trying to not make it last forever, but it's a quick list of none other than my favorite toys as a kid. So, starting off here with my favorite toys is none other than the Air Raiders. I loved the Air Raiders as a kid. They were really small figures. They were released in the 80s. Like I said, I'm not going to go into any in-depth details. I will put up pictures of these figures and toy lines as I go through them here. But I'm definitely going to put Air Raiders as my first one. They never had like a tie-in cartoon or anything, so they were really cool to play with. So Hasbro's Air Raiders from 1987 come in as my first favorite toy line as a kid that I loved. And coming in at the next spot, and I'm not putting any of these in any particular order from like best to worst or anything, it's just my favorite toy lines as a kid that I remember I love. Next is none other than Army Ants. And how could you not love Army Ants? I mean, they were little toy ants, figurines, they had guns, helmets on. I remember like the abdomens of these, or the ass ends of these, were really squishy, so that was kind of a cool feature. But the Army Ants were really cool, kind of in the same vein as the Air Raiders, that they didn't have like a animated series tie-in or anything like that. So coming in the next spot is none other than the 1987 toy line, another 1987 toy line, Army Ants, once again by good old Hasbro. And now at the next spot are none other than one of my favorite toy lines of all time. And these actually started out in Japan as a different toy line. They were tied in with the Transformers to begin with. They were Beastformers, and they are none other than the Battle Beasts. They were brought over to the US and redubbed Battle Beasts, and they were probably one of my favorite toy lines. And to this day, I still have my complete collection of Battle Beasts. I actually did a video showing off my complete collection of Battle Beasts some years back. The Battle Beasts came in a variety of different animals and robotic like armor. I mean, you had like almost every animal from the animal kingdom in this line. And they tried to do a comeback lately. I think it was Diamond Select Toys that tried to do a comeback, but it didn't really work out. So yeah, in 1986, Hasbro once again released one hell of a line, and it's coming in as like Hasbro is everything that I loved as a kid. I mean, they made some cool toys. And from 1986-87, it's the Battle Beasts by Hasbro. Gotta love them. And the next toy, I'm actually going to tie these two together, are none other than the WWF Hasbro wrestling line and the WCW Galoob wrestling figure line. I loved the WWF Hasbro line. It was a very cartoonish type line, which kind of tied in with toys at the time. All the toys in the 90s and late 80s were kind of in that cartoonish vibe of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or whatnot. And I even said like IRS would have tied in like great with the Dick Tracy line to one of my friends. But yeah, the WWF Hasbro line, I still have all my WWF Hasbro figures to this day. One of my favorite toy lines by far as a kid. Maybe my number one, but I'm a big wrestling fan as well. And I also have the complete line of the WCW Galoob figures, which were more stationary, more in the vein of the LJN figures, which I was not a big fan of as a kid because that was not my time period. I grew up more in the WWF Hasbro era and the WCW Galoob era, but I loved the Galoob figures almost more than WWF Hasbro because they didn't break, they were solid. I kind of wish they did have some movement to them sometimes, but yeah, I always wish that we got that line from the UK too. WCW Galoob and WWF Hasbro are my next two lines that I loved as a kid. And the next line is none other than Mattel's He-Man. I loved the animated series, loved the toy line. I had Castle Grayskull. Man, we had everything. All the play sets. You know, I had Battle Cat, Panther, Skeletor. I still have 10 figures to this day that I picked up recently and did a showcase and review on. But none other than the 1982 He-Man line, which lasted up till 1987. That WWF Hasbro line started in 1989. The Gloob line was 1990. He-Man, 1982 to 87. The Core was my next choice. When I was a kid, they were knockoff G.I. Joes, but I think they've gained more of a following as I got older. I always loved them as a kid because they weren't any certain character, and they were made by none other than Lantern Toys, and they weren't any certain character, releasing sets of like a whole division of a certain division, like a water division or a land division or jungle division, a bunch of different figures, in that mold. So they were very cool G.I. Joe type figures, and a lot of times a lot of people think that they are G.I. Joes, especially the old school ones. They looked a lot like the G.I. Joes did, 3 3/4 inch Joe figures. But yes, they were a very cool toy line by Lantern Toys. These started as a cheaper alternative to G.I. Joes, and actually I bought them more than G.I. Joes, so I got to put them on the list over G.I. Joes, even though I am a G.I. Joe fan too. So it's none other than the Core, which started around the popularity of G.I. Joe. I can't find out a date exactly of when these actually launched, but yeah, the Core action figures by Lantern Toys. Next on my list are none other than the Food Fighters. I always loved the Food Fighters. I remember the first time I saw these, I was in a store with my grandmother. I can't remember the store right off the top of my head, but it's a store that no longer is open or exists. But I remember seeing these in there and loving them, and she bought me every one that she could find. I remember I had the pancake guy, and I can't remember the names right off the top of my head. I had the hot dog guy. I had the ice cream cone dude, but they were like food fighters. They were dressed up in military fatigues, as you'll see in the pictures that I show while I'm running them along. So no need to kind of describe them. You'll see in the pictures. But man, did I love the Food Fighters, and wish that they would have launched more of these, and maybe even that refrigerator place that they were planning on releasing before they canceled the line. And one of my next lines that I really loved is the Tyco Dino Riders. I was a huge fan of the Tyco Dino Riders. I remember the Dino Riders VHS cassette that I had too, that I almost played out because I love this series so much. But the Dino Riders is an underrated toy line, and one of my favorites definitely from when I was a kid. And it kind of ties in to the Cadillacs and Dinosaurs toy line, which used a lot of the Dino Riders dinosaurs, and I've mentioned that in a showcase and review that I did, a retro showcase and review of a carded Cadillacs and Dinosaurs Jack Tenrick couple action figures. But I need a Dino Riders figure or two, but they are quite pricey right now on eBay, I noticed. But Dino Riders, definitely one of my favorites via Tyco. And one of my last but not least favorite toy lines from when I was a kid is none other than the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I also have one more that I'm also going to name off after this, but everybody loved the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They started in 1988, the first wave, and I had like every single Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. I had the sewer play set, I had the van, I had the pizza shooter, I had almost everything you could think of. I had at least all the figures. I didn't have the blimp, I don't think. But what a hell of a toy line. I loved all the colorful characters. I almost loved the mutants and the non-turtle characters more than I did the turtles themselves. But yeah, I'll never forget the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles action figure lines, and they have to be included in this list of my favorite toys as a kid. And the last one that I was thinking of, that I said last but not least, well, this is the final last one, and that is none other than Marshall Bravestar, the lawman of the distant planet New Texas. He battled Tex Hex in the series, and I was a huge fan of these toys, and believe it or not, I picked up these toys at Dollar General when I was a kid. I remember getting Tex Hex, I remember getting Marshall Bravestar, and the horse, robotic horse that he rode on, which I can't remember right off the top of my head. But yeah, I got a lot of these toys from the Dollar General store. I remember I had Sandstorm, definitely Tex Hex, and Marshall Bravestar themselves. I even think I had a couple vehicles as well. And yeah, the horse that he rode was really cool, and that's one that I really remember. That's a Mattel toy from when I was a kid that I loved. Some honorable mention here: Garbage Pail Kids, the Mad Balls. Those aren't really toys. The New Adventures of He-Man I really loved. of course, I did like G.I. Joe, but not a humongous fan. I collected more of like the crazy G.I. Joe characters and stuff. But I hope you liked listening to this little list here of my favorite toy lines that I enjoyed as a kid. And make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a comment down below, give me a like if you like what you heard, and give me a list of some of your favorite toys down below, or talk about any of these toys that I mentioned down below. I really enjoy talking to all my friends and subscribers about toys here on my channel. So until next time, guys, thanks for listening, and as always, peace out.